today I'm going to look at Dagon, a short story by H.P. Lovecraft. Depending on the order in which you read his stories, this is about story number 4, and it was written when he was in his early 30s. So the first 3 stories that I talked about so far, one of them is when he was a teenager and it's about wizards and castles, and the second one was about him meeting old authors that he thought would be neat to talk to, and then the third one started to get more into the kinds of things we know him for, which involved a person who was looking down on rural folk, and one of the rural folk, it turns out, was intelligent because he was inhabited by a super intelligent space alien. So they're all very different from each other and all also very different from Dagon, and I think with Dagon we're getting more into the type of story that Lovecraft is known for. So in Dagon we've got a naval officer, or a naval soldier, who is, his boat is captured, he manages to escape, and he's all alone in a little rowboat with some food. And he falls asleep while out in the open ocean of the Pacific. And when he wakes up, he finds that his boat is stranded on a giant, vast, black plain. And it's as if the entire ocean floor has come up underneath him and stranded him there with dead fish and all sorts of other things. And there is no sight of ocean anywhere around him. So it's got to be a pretty massive, we'll call it an island, that's come up underneath him, and he is completely baffled how this could possibly have happened to him. But it's the only thing that makes sense in his mind, because if he had grounded himself on an island, then there'd still be ocean there from where the boat came in. And instead there is no ocean anywhere at all to be seen, just flopping dead fish and emptiness. So he starts exploring this emptiness to try to figure out where the ocean is so that he can drag his boat there and hopefully get back off to civilization somewhere. And he is very disturbed by the never-ending plain, the nasty mud, the decaying fish, and he's very good at describing all the different senses, the gooiness of the mud, the nasty smells of the fish, the unutterable hideousness of absolute silence and barren immensity. So a lot of it is just feeling so alone in a place that he finds to be completely unappealing to the extreme. So he's got nauseating fear at all of this black slime, not a cloud in the sky, just him meandering through this muck looking for some sort of a place that he could go to. So he starts packing across all of this mud, keep going further and further. Finally he sees a rise in the distance and decides, well, maybe if he gets up on this little hill thing, he can see a little better and try to figure out where he is and what direction to go in. And he just goes on more about the unbroken monotony, how everything is awful because it is all so plain and black and nothing at all to distinguish anything from anything else. And he gets up onto his hillock thing, and he sees that the other side of it is a deep hole into the ground. And at the bottom of this hole in the ground there's some water, and on the opposite side of this hole in the ground is a giant gleaming white, he thinks it's a piece of stone, but then he decides it's some sort of monolith that someone built. And on this monolith are all sorts of strange, mysterious hieroglyphics full of fishy shapes, like fishes and eels and octopi, crustaceans, whales. And then he realizes that there are giant things that he can see, giant images, and the images are of a huge grotesque person that has webbed hands and feet, so a fish person, and it's attacking a whale, but the whale is about the same size as the fish person, which makes him think that this fish person is some sort of a god image, or some sort of a gigantic human-like creature. So he is very upset by all of these fish images. I have to laugh because I love fish and I love octopuses, so to me seeing some sort of a giant monolith full of fish and octopuses and things would be a very cool thing. I'm wondering why he has such a immense hatred of fishy things. And then when he is looking at this giant monolith and at the water below him down in this pit, he sees a thing slide into view above the dark waters. It is vast and loathsome. It's got a stupendous monster, which has gigantic scaly arms, and it bowed its head, his hideous head, and gave vent to certain measured sounds, and then he went mad. So the howling of this giant aquatic sea creature drove him mad, and he went back to his boat and then was completely crazy, and he was eventually somehow picked up by a passing ship that brought him to a hospital in San Francisco, and they all just thought that he had gone insane because he was on the water all by himself for too long. And no one believed him. He tried to research what this giant monster could be or what the sea creatures could be, and nobody, of course, helped him because they just thought he was insane, and plus, what did he really see? So now he's convinced that this sea monster is going to come after him, and as we end the story, he says he hears a noise at the door as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me, and he jumps out the window. So, different from some of the other stories in here, there is no one else in the story except, you could say the giant monster. There is just the person alone, all alone, in black slime and foul smells and icky sensations, and what other senses? Everything looks black and gooey, and it looks aquatic, and these to him are super nasty, which makes me wonder. Clearly it's the author who's writing these things and feels that these things are nasty and gooey and so on, but the actual character in the story is a sailor, and why would a sailor be so completely resistant to the idea of fish and octopus and mollusks and things? You would think that these are things that would be pretty normal for a sailor to be around and to be comfortable with. So it seems odd to me that he has a sailor doing all these things. It would be better, I suppose, in my mind, if it was some sort of I don't know, an army person being transported across the sea, who then develops this wild fear or hatred of sailor kinds of activities. But in any case, everything is black and gooey and all the same. And to him, this is completely atrocious, that he is alone and trapped in this world. There is no way out. And then finally, when he finds something that is different, it ends up being a gooey pool with a giant monster in it that makes horrendous noises and drives him completely mad. So I appreciate his descriptive language and the way he describes these things to be so visceral that you can really feel the gooiness of the sticky mud and how it's just unending in all directions. I suppose at the same time, just because of my nature, I like things that are quiet and peaceful. And if I was in a place that was all quiet and, I don't know, unfilled with human kinds of things, I don't think I would find that horrific. Won't to say if I was stranded and desperate for food and thinking I was going to run out of food. But he doesn't give that sense. He doesn't give the sense of, oh no, I'm going to run out of food and what I'm going to do. It's more of a sense of, oh, it's nasty just inherently. It is inherently nasty because it is black. And it's inherently nasty because it is mud. And I don't think that I find it to be that way. So even as he's describing it, I'm saying, okay, he's in a giant mud plain. And is that really that bad in the grand scheme of things? Could be like full of fire, or it could be freezing cold. He never gives a sense that it's physically troubling. That he talks a little bit about the heat, but he's able to deal with the heat well enough by finding shade and going around at night, and that these are fine things. He doesn't give a sense that like the mud is prickly or hurts your feet. Maybe I watch too many Naked and Afraid kinds of shows and think about all these other kinds of ways in which life could be truly nasty. There aren't any biting insects attacking you in hordes. All the things that could possibly be troubling you seem to be absent in this. So in order to absorb the message here, you have to be really afraid of mud and afraid of quiet and afraid of being alone. And to me, those kinds of things are not that scary. And you'd have to be really afraid of octopuses and crustaceans and mollusks and whales, and I suppose eels, but I don't even find eels to be that scary. Maybe it's because I watch a lot of nature shows, and those all seem like pleasant natural things to me. And you don't want to be attacked by eels, but he's not even talking about them being threatening. He's just talking about them being a language, and that seems sort of like a happy Atlantean mermaid kind of thing to me, and not something that is scary. when he says that they're inscriptions and crude sculptures, he doesn't say that they're like evil octopuses strangling people or anything like that. So I appreciate his trying to create a sense of horror and the way that he uses language to do it and so on. But the world in which he is creating his horror message is not one that I find horrific. And some of the things that he says that are scary to him, like it being silent, are appealing to me. So it's a little odd to me that he is so petrified of silence, when to me that seems like, a far nicer thing than, if it was a place where things were screaming at you all the time, or there were shark piercing wind howls or something like that. So maybe we all have different things that we would be afraid of or upset by, and my version of a horror world would be very different from this vision of a horror world. But we're getting at the thought that he fears being alone. He fears the smell of fish. He grew up in Providence. Maybe just being by the fish markets and all that other kind of stuff was the nastiest smell that he could possibly imagine smelling. And he is afraid of this giant water monster that makes really scary noises when it emerges, so much so that he is obsessed by it and thinks it's going to chase him down and that he will kill himself. And he doesn't really describe it that much. It's like an undescribable, nameless, voiceless kind of monster, which then drives him mad. So, that's part of a theory, storyline that he then expands on in the coming stories. So, what are my thoughts? I think he has a different view of what's scary than I do. And I appreciate hearing his view of things. I suppose another thought that came to me while I was reading this is that he was really afraid of everything being monotonous and the same. But if we know his view of culture, he doesn't like people of minority cultures or all sorts of other groups. So to him, you would think that he would like things all being monotonous and the same, with everything being exactly understandable and equal to each other. So it's intriguing to me also that he was so upset by the monotonous nature of this world that he's in, when that seems to be something that appeals to him in general with his worldview. But other than that, I will go forward and see what the future stories hold. Let me know if you have any thoughts about this one. I found it interesting to read, but I think I will enjoy the future stories better. We will find out.